Hi, it's Miss Lokes, and if you're watching this, you probably have a student in my math class, probably my Math 9 class, because that's where I do this spiral learning thing the most. And so this is just an explanation of how it works, because I get a lot of questions about this. So I want you to think back to when you were in high school math and think about how the structure usually went. You would do a unit on, say, trigonometry. We don't do that in grade 9, but it's a unit. Um, and so you do the first lesson on it, and it's some vocabulary. It's all pretty easy. It all makes sense. And then the next day you have like lesson this you did 5.1, now you're going to do 5.2. It's a little more involved, but it's still pretty good. And then the next day you do 5.3 and it's a little bit more complicated and you're using everything you did in 5.1 and 5.2. And then the next day you're doing 5.4. And if you haven't been really keeping up at this point, you can start to feel really lost because there's been a lot of new stuff thrown at you in the last couple of days. And often by the time you get to the point 5 part of it, you're completely lost. You don't have any idea what's going on anymore. And that's a terrible feeling. And so what I'm doing, part of why I do this way is because we avoid that by not doing the entire unit all like bang, 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 bang. Also with that, if you miss 2 days and you come back, you have no idea what's going on. So this is essentially what I do. Instead of doing like these are all of the learning outcomes that we do in Math 9, and they're just color coded so that each unit is a different color, each topic is a separate color. Okay, so instead of doing all of the algebra lessons at the beginning, for example, what we'll do is we'll start off and um, we'll do a lesson on algebra. And then we'll do a lesson on exponents. And then we'll do some polynomial vocabulary. And then we'll do a little bit more with exponents because those two things of exponents kind of go together and you really need both of them to make sense of anything. And then we'll do an introduction to word problems. And we'll call those 5 outcomes a unit. And in this case, the alpha unit is the review, and the beta unit, that's this one, that's what's in the beta unit. And then after we finish that, then we'll start into the gamma unit, which is going to start off with some graphing, plotting, just basic plotting of graphs of X and Y coordinates. And then we'll do two-step algebra. And then we'll do introduce some polynomial vocabulary. And then we'll do that was the green one, was order of operations with integers. And what we've added new in grade 9 is exponents and brackets in that order of operations. And then we'll do the polynomial vocabulary. And then we will do another set of word problems, more stuff with word problems. So that's our second unit. And so as you can see, the colors show the topics are all spread out. So I'm just going to skip down here, and this is what the whole thing looks like when I've spread it all out. So we've got each little set here is 5 topics, and then we do a unit test. And so this has a couple of benefits to it. One is that the most powerful one that I see looking at this is that if somebody really struggles with say the one-step algebra questions, which is the first part of algebra, it's like a week or 2 weeks before we get to the second topic of the algebra. And that means that if you're really struggling with it, you have lots of time to come in and get that bit figured out before we're on to the next thing where we're using everything you learned in the first part. And then it's another week and a half or 2 weeks before we get to the next level of algebra. So you have lots of time to be learning something that you're struggling with. And most students don't struggle with all of the topics. Often there's 1 or 2 topics that they're struggling with, and they do pretty well on the rest of it. So there's lots of time to do the new topic and work on the thing that you've been struggling with before we get to the next level of that topic. Something else that is an integral part of how I teach this is that for every learning outcome, every topic, we do 2 quizzes. And so we end up with this sort of waterfall effect. So this is a very complicated table, but I'm going to try and show you what it is. Along the left here, we have all of the dates that we have classes, and then over on the right here, these are all of the learning outcomes in the top, so the topics that we're going to do. So just ignore all the turquoise stuff. That's the startup unit, the review, and it's always a bit of a chaos. But let's look, for example, at let's look down here. This is in the Gamma unit. We're going to do on Friday, the 26th of September. We do the lesson for the like L.1, which is the first lesson on linear linear equations, which is graphing, and then uh, 2 day the reddish one is a no class day. Like that was Tuesday. That was the a reconciliation day. So there's no class that day. So 3 days after that, we do a quiz on that topic, and the day after that, the kids get the quiz back so they can do their corrections. And then a couple of days after that, we have a second quiz on it, and then they get the quizzes back and do corrections on it. So even without any input on their point, they're interacting with this content 5 times before we get to the test. And so that means that's so many more opportunities for remembering things. That's the best way to learn something, is to just see it often, and the more frequently you see it, the better the learning is. Another advantage of this is because we're using for example, the linear equations. We're doing that. If I go back to that other graph, we're doing it all year. So that's these gray ones. So we're doing it in this unit, and we're doing it again here, and we're doing it again here, and we're doing it again here. So we're building on it all the time. So there's not this thing where you start off, you do the unit on graphing, and then you don't see it again till the end of the course, and then you've forgotten it all. So there's really not much opportunity to fully forget anything with this approach. It also has the advantage of trying to break the students out of the idea that math exists in a silo. When you're doing math, it's not that you do the trigonometry and then you forget it, and then you do the unit on exponents and then you write your test and you forget it. Once you've done the exponents, you're accountable for that always. So I'm trying to break that apart so students aren't thinking about it as, this is the polynomials, I don't need to worry about it anymore. No, polynomials are everywhere in math. So breaking down that idea. The other thing that I want to show you is the forgetting curve, it's sometimes called. So this is the forgetting curve, or one version of it. And the idea is, if you follow the blue line, if you just learn something, you forget it very, very quickly. And over time, it just, it goes down very low. If you remember it, if you interact with it again, it goes up, and then you forget more slowly, and then the next time you remember it, you forget even more slowly, and then you learn it again, or you refresh your memory of it, it learns even more slowly. By the time you've done this several times, the forgetting happens much, much more slowly, and you retain that information much longer. And isn't that really what we're after when we're teaching, especially, I think, math, because math is so dependent on what you've learned before. So that's basically what it's about. If you're interested in reading up on this, it's sometimes called interleaved learning, and there's actually quite a bit of research to support this. It is a little chaotic for sure. So I'm going to show you, we eventually fall into a cycle where one day we do a lesson and some practice, and then they're doing corrections on 2 quizzes. One is an A quiz and one is a B quiz. So the first quiz on something and the second quiz on something else. And then the next day we write 2 quizzes. And then the next day it's a lesson and practice and quiz corrections. And then, so we fall into that cycle of alternating days. So there does become some regularity to it. Just the first couple of weeks are not so smooth because we're trying to get things set up and all of that good stuff. And the kids have a printout of this. It is on the OneNote live notes that are uploaded automatically after every lesson that I do. And so there's lots of support there for the students to keep themselves organized. And I have done this for several years now, and I found this so much more successful in in the students learning and remembering what they've learned. And like I said, that's really what the game's all about. Okay, I hope this helped. If you have questions, send me an email. Bye.